All right. So neuropeptides and cytokines. So we'll learn more about these guys later. But just don't worry about which hormone families, etc. But do want you guys to know what gastrin does, what CCK does, etc. Right? So again, the primary effects and stuff like that. Okay. 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 So now the integrated function. Okay. So there's two portions to really eating. Okay. And that's the celiac phase. Okay. That's what happens in the head. Okay. And the gastric phase. What happens in the stomach. Okay. Okay. So let's start. The celiac phase begins even before you consume food. Okay, so the reflex begins in the brain. So the anticipation of food in the oral cavity activates neurons in medulla. It causes primarily salivary glands to activate. Right, so you start producing saliva. Okay, so the saliva softens and lubricates food. Okay, that's the most important thing. And then the digestion of starch. It also digests a little bit of fat and other stuff, but that's more for taste purposes. Okay. And then last but not least, defense. The saliva actually has enzymes in it that break down bacteria. In addition to that, the saliva actually goes to your tonsils and it transfers like signals to your tonsils about what type of food is entering your and what type of bacteria is entering. Okay. Okay. The mechanical digestion begins with chewing, otherwise known as mastication. Okay. All right. So next thing I want you guys to understand is swallowing. Swallowing is a reflex that's controlled by the medulla oblongata. Okay. And so you push stuff into your throat back enough, you'll automatically swallow it. Okay. 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 The functions of the stomach. Okay. Number one, storage. Okay. We eat 3 or 4 times a day. Okay. And so we need to store the food in between. Okay. And we eat for like 15, 20, half an hour, etc. Okay. So in the hour in which we eat, we need to get all the food into our body, so we have to store it. Okay, so the digestion in the lower stomach, digest lipids and proteins, primarily proteins. Okay, and then it has acid, enzymes, paracrine signals, and hormones, and we'll learn more about that. And then last but not least, the defense against swallow pathogens. Okay, most bacteria cannot handle the pH 2 environment of the stomach, so therefore they die there. Okay. All right. So here's the reflexes. Okay. Okay. So the enteric plexus. Okay, the enteric nervous system is a nervous system similarly that works around the intestines. Okay. 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 So gastric secretions protecting the digest. So okay. So gastric glands are found in gastric pits. The gastric secretion. Okay. The G cells secrete gastrin. Okay. Gastrin causes the cells to secrete everything else, including HCl. the acid, okay, and then the pepsinogen, pepsin generating, so pepsinogen is pepsin generating. The HCl cuts the pepsinogen into pepsin, okay. There's gastric lipase as well, so you can digest a little bit of fat, but that's not really physiologically all that important. Okay. Okay. The peroxide cells secrete intrinsic factor. Okay. So on this page, what's important is gastrin, HCl, okay, pepsinogen, and intrinsic factor. And oh, sorry, that's at least somatostatin. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's figure out what all of these things do. Okay. Okay. So preventing and auto digestion. Okay. So I'm gonna rephrase this a little bit. Your stomach will auto digest itself. You just want to slow it down enough that you can replace your lining. Okay. Okay. And that is done by a mucous membrane. Okay. Where's the mucous membrane slide? So right here, the mucous membrane is a physical barrier. Okay. So the you produce a membrane on the surface. Okay. The mucous membrane, or not mucous membrane, mucous layer, okay, is a physical barrier. And then below that, you actually secrete bicarb. So the bicarb actually neutralizes the acid, right? Bicarb is a barrier, as a base. So the pH is about 7. Okay. Even that, you start having to replace your mucus. You start having to replace these cells pretty quickly. Okay. Okay. So food, okay, triggers the gastric mucosa. It triggers the G cells. It triggers gastrin. Okay, gastrin triggers the rest of it. Okay, pepsinogen. Okay, being made, the HCl being produced. Okay, and then last but not least, it works as a negative feedback loop. Okay, because you don't want too much HCl and pepsin in your stomach unless there was something to digest. If there was something to digest, then the food coming in neutralizes some of the acid. Okay, absorbs some of the acid, so you produce more. If there's nothing else coming in, then you need to stop, and that is somatostatin. Okay, somatostatin realizes there's way too much H plus, or the Z cells realize there's too much H plus and secrete somatostatin. Somatostatin, okay, will block, okay, the production of HCl. It will also block the production of pepsinogen, so you stop producing enzymes that digest it. Okay. All right. So let's see. Blah, blah, to explain everything. Okay. So the next slide, the intestinal phase. Okay. The intestinal phase, again, we can control the small intestine in terms of how fast it moves through or how slow. It's not really under conscious control. Like we can slow it down, we can speed it up, we can't stop or start it. Okay. Okay. The small intestine, okay, has crypts, has villi, okay, to increase the surface area. On top of that, it has microvilli to actually really increase the surface area, okay, and then okay, most absorption occurs along the villi. Most fluid secretion occurs in the crypts. The villi have the brush board. Okay, the crypts do not. Okay, so the brush border helps absorb everything. Okay, so you have capillaries underneath the villi. The capillaries will absorb the protein and the sugar. Okay, the lymphatic system will actually absorb the fat. Okay, okay. So, uh, so okay. Most nutrients pass through the hepatic portal system. Okay. Again, except fat. Okay. So the hepatic portal system, you have the portal has one set of capillaries, two set of capillaries. Okay. That is a portal. The portal is here you absorb all the nutrients. Here you pass through the hepatic portal vein, okay, into the liver. The liver filters the food before it enters the heart. Okay, once it enters the heart, it's everywhere. Okay, so you need the liver to filter the food. So you have a capillary bed where you absorb the nutrients. You have another capillary bed where you filter the food, and then what goes in the heart is available for use. Okay. Okay. Intestinal secretion promote digestion. So digest enzyme, bile, bicarbonate, mucus, isotonic HCl. Okay. Okay. So um, the isotonic NaCl secretion, you secrete NaCl through to the lumen. That fluid also flows and allows water to come through because you're pumping salt. Water follows salt, so water follows salt. So you have more water in your intestines. Okay, okay. That's why you, to put it grossly, when you have like diarrhea, you actually pull out more water than the food you eat. That's why. Okay. Okay. So next thing, okay, the CFTR channel. Okay, I'm sure most of you guys have heard of cystic fibrosis. Okay, um, the CF, the cystic fibrosis is a mutation in the CFTR channel. So having this mutation is not just your lungs. Your lungs are by far the worst off, but you also have problems with digestion as well. Okay. Uh, all right. Um, so the pancreas secretes enzymes and bicarbonate. We'll skip the endocrine portion for now. We'll focus on exocrine portion. The exocrine portion secretes something called pancreatic juice. Okay, pancreatic juice has two parts: digestive enzymes and sodium bicarbonate. Okay, okay. So the bicarbonate secretion neutralizes the gastric acid. So remember, the pancreas attaches to the duodenum, so through the duodenal papilla. Okay, so it secretes the digestive enzymes and sodium bicarb into the small intestine. Okay, so oops, let me clear all this stuff. Okay. Okay, so what happens is the exocrine pancreas secretes the digestive enzymes, okay, into the small intestine, either through the major duodenal papilla right here or the minor duodenal papilla up there. Okay. Okay. So the pancreatic secretions include inactive zymogens, okay, zymogen, zyme, okay, enzyme generating. So these are inactive enzymes. You can't have active enzymes in the pancreas, or you will digest away the pancreas itself. And this actually happens occasionally in pancreatic cancers. They activate enzymogens, and the zymogens digest the pancreas. Okay, so you make zymogens, you deliver them to the small intestine. Okay, now once in the small intestine, you want the enzymes to work. So what happens is the small intestine produces an enzyme called enteropeptidase on the brush border. It's literally attached, physically attached to the brush border. Okay, this enzyme will turn something called trypsinogen, okay, into trypsin. Okay, trypsin is an enzyme that will cut proteins. Okay, at very, very specific locations. Okay, it is an enteropeptidase. It cuts proteins in the middle it recognizes a certain pattern and it cuts that pattern. Okay, and so you have a bunch of enzymes that all have that pattern, and so trypsin will activate them. So it'll activate chymotrypsinogen into chymotrypsin. Okay, pro-carboxylpeptidase into carboxylpeptidase, etc., etc. Lipase, also lipase. Okay. So trypsin and chymotrypsin are actually the first couple of enzymes discovered. Okay, that's really why there are the few enzymes that do not end in the words ASE. Okay. Okay. The other thing that the pancreas does is bicarbonate secretion. Your stomach has a pH 2 and it is surrounded by mucus to prevent the acid from digesting your stomach. Your small intestine has a pH of about 8. It's actually slightly basic. And that is because your pancreas produces bicarb. Okay, large amounts of bicarb, and that neutralizes the acid coming in from the stomach. Okay. Okay, the liver secretes bile. Okay, bile is aided for fat digestion, it's stored and concentrated in the bile. Okay, gallbladder sends bile through the duodenum through the common bile duct. Okay, so here's the gallbladder. Okay, there's two ducts here. This duct right here is called a cystic duct. Okay, okay. So this is the hepatic duct. Okay, this is called cystic duct. They combine in common bile duct and they enter through the okay. pancreas right here. Okay. Okay. And so it leaks through the same hole as the pancreatic juice. That is the major duodenal papilla. Although what the sphincter is the sphincter of Oddi, but the hole is the major duodenal papilla. Okay. Okay. So this is the liver structure, but this is the liver function. This is the more important thing. Okay. So okay. So secreted in the duodenum, bile salts, bilirubin, water, ions, phospholipids. Okay. Um, okay. So these things help break down the fat. Okay. It absorbs things from the GI tract, nutrients, blah, blah. And the liver does all this. Okay. Most importantly, detox and storage. Okay. Okay. This is bile. Okay. What bile does is emulsify fat. So you can see that here. Okay. The emulsification allows this to digest it easier. Okay. So one side allows it to associate with lipids, one side allows to associate with water. So this makes it the fat easily more accessible and digestible. Okay. Okay. So here you can see the enzyme breaking down fat. Okay. Okay. So next thing, fat digestion goes through bile salts. This is emulsification. It is not digestion. Okay. It breaks down in smaller cells, and then you attach cholesterol to it. Okay. And you form a little bubble. That bubble goes into the lacteal, and it actually goes directly to the vena cava through the lips. Okay. Okay. So bile salts facilitate fat digestion. Okay. Through lipases and colipase. Okay. Carbohydrates are cleaved by the pancreatic enzymes into individual monomers and sometimes dimers, and those are actually absorbed. Okay. Okay. So here. Okay. Proteins are digested in small peptides and amino acids. Okay. All right. There are two groups of enzymes, endopeptidases and exopeptidases. Okay. So the way this works, you have sequences of peptides. So this is your peptide. Endopeptidases cut in the middle. Okay. So they cut them into small fragments. Okay. And then the exopeptidases, exo cuts from the outside. So if you have a small enough piece, they can cut one at a time. And so, but you can't miss up exopeptidases because that whole chain is thousands of amino acids long. So you need to cut them up into small strips and then you cleave off one at a time. So you need both endopeptidases and exopeptidases. Okay. Okay. So you can see that here. Okay. Endo cuts in the middle, exo cuts on the edges. Okay. And then you absorb the individual amino acids and you dump them into the bloodstream. Okay, you also reabsorb a lot of water and salt in the intestines. Okay, I know it's weird to think about because you know in high school they go, okay, look, the small intestine absorbs food, the large intestine absorbs water. Okay, not true. Okay, the small intestine reabsorbs most of the water, all of the food. The large intestine absorbs the remaining water. Okay. Okay. So yeah, hopefully this makes sense to you guys now. Okay. All right. Okay. So large intestine, anatomy of large intestine. Uh, so fats. Okay. They absorb some vitamins. That has to do with intrinsic factor. Okay. One second. Okay. So apparently I skipped this slide. The nucleic acids are digested in the basis of monosaccharides and absorbed. The intestines also reabsorb vitamins and minerals. So the fat-soluble vitamins are absorbed with the fats. The water-soluble vitamins are absorbed by mediated transport. The most important one um, is in B12. B12 is absorbed into the small intestine when complex to intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is produced by the stomach. Okay, so one of the things about stomach stapling and stuff like that is you don't produce enough intrinsic factor, and you don't absorb enough vitamin B12. Okay, all right. Iron and calcium absorption is actively regulated because you want to regulate iron and you want to regulate calcium. You can't have too much iron or too much calcium. So, but you can't have too little. So you need to regulate how much gets reabsorbed. So if you need calcium, you up regulate the calcium absorption in the small intestine. If you don't need calcium, then you don't uptake it. Okay. All right. Okay. The rest of it is just pretty straightforward. Okay. All right. I'll end this talk here.